I made a Reddit thread the other night commenting on certain board games' artwork. And much to my surprise, it kind of took off. In fact, I had a lot of people taking it as an attack on the board game, that a good game is in no way diminished by bad artwork. But let's stand back for a second. I own Caverna. I own it because I know it's a good game. But let's say for a minute that you're not one of us, the people that are so obsessed with board games that they are so engrossed in the news and Board Game Geek and finding out what's number one on the hotness every single day. When they walk into a store, I guarantee you they're going to pick up this way before they even get to Caverna. This is human nature, and I know because I have to plead with people just to try out Caverna. So in this way, aren't we halting a brand new player from enjoying an amazing game? Not with Scythe. Caverna. The art's not terrible, with its soft focus and really bad dwarf anatomy. But the reason I bring this up is because I had a lot of people tell me that board games don't bring enough revenue to pay an artist a reasonable wage. And while that could be true in some points, Caverna being $80 at my game store, Scythe's only $60. I just don't think these games have an excuse anymore. It's not 1990, and for the most part, when you go into a game store, the cover of a board game is its advertisement. Someone that walks into a store and just wants to play a bigger game than Catan or a bigger game than Monopoly. They're going to go straight for Scythe. They're not going to go for Caverna. And that's a shame, because this game is really, really good. But the way it looks like a boring game. And I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this. I know that in advance. But I think it's something that needs to be said, because a lot of people are just giving people outs for how their art looks, when something like Scythe comes around and really just kind of blows it out of the park. And yeah, this is 7 pounds of wood, but Scythe is no lightweight. The other thing I had a lot of people tell me was that you come for the game and not the artwork. And that's entirely true. But I think you stay for the game. When you're walking down the aisle filled with games, you pick up the one that looks the coolest. But the game in question today is Scythe. This beautiful box. Scythe's massive box was designed by Jamie Stegmaier. All of the beautiful art and world building was created by Jakub Brzezowski. It plays with 1 to 5 players. The solo mode was made by Automa Factory. And it says you can play it in 115 minutes, which, as specific as that is, you're going to be pushing it pretty fast. Scythe's player boards are a different thing altogether. The Kickstarter allowed for this double-layered cardboard effect. Whenever you place one of your little wood tokens, of which there are an insane amount in the box, it sets in nicely and it doesn't move around at all. You're going to be using your player token to choose which action you take. If you take one of the 4 actions, then you can't take it the next turn, so you have to choose something else. When you want to upgrade something, you're pulling it out of its nice nestled little position and putting it down on a bottom row where it'll make things cheaper for you. And then when you eventually build a mech, you pull it off its place and reveal underneath it one of the 4 different abilities that it gives all mechs and all heroes. When you eventually get into combat, it's extremely simple. In secret, you just spin your combat dial to how much combat you want to spend out of your bank. Then you take any combat card, you tuck it behind the dial, and you add the 2 together, and then you show it to your opponent. Whoever has the highest combat value wins the fight. In Scythe, you can definitely tell when they're trying to streamline something, which is both good and kind of bad. If someone really wants to have giant mech combat and warfare, this isn't the game for you. Scythe is all about diversifying. The game as a whole is about building an empire that has a little bit of everything. Now we're gonna have to come in close. Whether you buy Scythe's expansions like Invaders from Afar, the extension board, the upgraded resource tokens, or all of the metal tokens to replace the cardboard ones. It all comes down to how the game actually plays. And while I don't want to go into extreme detail on all the rules like usual, I still think there's some things worth mentioning. The first off is Scythe starts slow. It starts slow, one, for teaching people the rules, because there's a lot of them, as there is in many of these larger games. Scythe is a simple game at its core, but in the end, you're going to be planning for your future many turns out. In my last game I played, I started placing coins next to every action that I think I was going to take in the future. 1 for the next turn, 3 for the turn after that, and a 5 for the turn 3 in advance. My brother, he pulled out a memo pad, and he'd write down everything he thought he was going to have to do, what he was going to do next turn, and the turn after that, and what he wanted to end up in. We would watch as every turn, when he'd finish his turn, he'd scratch off 1 or 2 things. Now the rulebook states that you should make deals, you should use diplomacy, you should buy people off, etc. And in my experience, we were so caught up in what we had to do this turn, the turn after that, that we didn't want to destroy our engine, and so the only thing we really said out loud was, oh geez, I wasn't ready at all for my turn. Now, maybe that will go away with the more games we play. And we certainly are going to play more games because I have to get the most out of this, like $150 I'm invested in the game. But all of that kind of describes Scythe as a whole. The game starts slow, and your engine kind of builds as you play it. And the more you play it, the more you learn, and the more you want to do, the more you want out of the game. So you may be wondering, I still have no idea what he thinks about Scythe. And that's because it's a hard game. I think it's important. I think it's an extremely important game because it was a Kickstarter that really pushed boundaries. It had insanely beautiful art from a really well-known artist. It had gorgeous pieces of every type: wood, plastic, cardboard. It also had a world that it tried to create, something that a lot of board games don't really do. Jakub Brzezowski creates a world where there's a bear on every single card. It's a game that my entire family I forced to try, and every time they played their first 4-hour-long game just to learn the rules, and then when we finished they said, damn, alright, this is what I'm going to do next time. My brother has a really good description of board games because he doesn't try to like a game. He's incredibly pessimistic about most games. And with Scythe, he said, I hate this game 3 times during it. But he stood up at the end of the game and he said, this game sucks, I'm going to bed. And I said, oh, okay. And then he said, we're playing again tomorrow. So I think Scythe is kind of an enigma. It's a game that has a lot of different games stuck into it. Almost like they jammed 30 different ideas all into one big box and tried to make it work together. And it does work together. It's fun, but I think it'll only be fun for certain people. It can be slow, it can slog on at the beginning, and it can even slog on at the end when you just don't know what to do. I've played with family and friends, and all of them that I've had to teach the game to had a tough time in the first game, but always wanted to play again. And if there's something that board games are trying to do is trying to bring more people to them. That's why I started this with Caverna, because I think Caverna is a game that you don't play until someone else makes you play it, where Scythe is a game that you pick up off the shelf and say, this looks like a fun evening. So, thank you everyone for watching. If you disagree with everything I said today, then cool. But I wasn't really planning on doing a Scythe review until I heard a whole bunch of comments on it and played it a few more times for myself. And I think it's a game that you certainly have to try at some point. Whether you want to put $150 into it to get everything for it, like I have, that's up to you. But if you have a chance, try it. It's a gorgeous experience that you can get a lot of people into really easily just because of how it looks. I hope you got something out of that. Regardless, thanks for watching. Get some friends together, try some new games, and have a good night. When they walk into a store, I guarantee you they're going to pick up this. Oh.